Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew. So I apologize for not posting last week. Some stuff came up in my life, as it tends to, and kind of makes it difficult to, there were a couple of issues that came up and I felt like it was better to resolve them immediately than let them kind of stagnate. So I didn't post last week, but that's okay. It's not going to affect this series much. I'm still going to end at the same time. I was only planning on making and releasing one video last week, so I'm going to actually make that and release it for next week, and then just post it there. So it's not going to affect much. Last week is going to be the last week of this series, and then I'm going to move on to a couple of just single videos that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to take my Christmas break, as I do, and then we'll go from there in the new year, decide what we're going to talk about. I do want to mention, before I get started on this video, I've had a couple of comments over time about some of the videos I've done, and they're great constructive criticisms, and I love constructive criticisms. I mean, I've gotten some less than constructive criticisms as well, which, they are what they are. But some of the constructive criticisms I get are that, when talking about an issue, I may only talk about this specific small portion of this issue, and there's all this over here that I don't talk about. Fair enough. That's true. When I make videos, I tend to watch what other people are making, not so that I make the same type of video, just to kind of get an idea where everyone is and what everyone's talking about, that type of thing. And if I see the same type of thing over and over and over again on other places that I look for these videos, why do I want to make the same video as everyone else? Now, some of them I have, some of them I will still be. That being said, if I see an interesting point that maybe hasn't been brought up, if I see a perspective that is more my perspective, or if I find an area of the topic interesting, that's what I want to talk about. So just because I talk about something doesn't mean that's the whole issue, by any means. I'll give you an example. When I talked about, I believe it was divorce, I could be wrong about that, but I believe it was the divorce one. Yes, I talked about it from a man's perspective. Is there a woman's perspective? Of course there is. And I'm not saying that women have it easy either. I'm not. I was just highlighting the fact that for men, it doesn't make sense anymore to get married. Now, again, just because I'm talking about that doesn't mean I don't understand that there's a whole nother side to it that can't be argued. I just implicitly assumed, and you know what they say about assume, makes an ass out of you and me. Fun little trick on learning how to spell it. But I just assume that people realize that, yes, I'm talking about this part of it, but there's way more to it. Hopefully you can see that. But I think I'm just going to highlight that and let you guys know that in advance from now on in certain videos. I think this one and the one I release tomorrow are good examples of that. So, today I'm talking about men's preference and what they look for in a woman to become their wife. Tomorrow I'm talking about women's preference and what they look for in a man. These aren't the only preferences that are out there. I think these are, at least for the men, I'm going to talk about the men's ones because this is the men's video, but I think these are the major ones for most men. Now, that being said, there are exceptions, there are others. I'm going to highlight why I think it's not unreasonable for men to have these preferences. But I do understand that there is the counter argument out there. I'm not going to highlight that counter argument. That's for other people. Number one, generally in this case, in this video, I disagree with that counter argument for a couple reasons. And then number two, I've only got so much time. I could talk for 3, 4, 5 hours and still not cover all the issues. And no one's going to watch a 5-hour video about this, number one. And even if I do, and even if it's the most complete video ever, I'll still have some commenter be like, you missed this point. It happens. Number two, I want it to be interesting for me as well as you guys, and if I do that, it just seems monotonous and boring. So understand that there are other sides to this argument. I am just presenting this one. Okay. Good? We good? Good. Okay. So as I said, I think there are for most men, there are 4 main categories that they look for in a woman to decide whether or not they want that woman they want to go to the next step with that woman, become their, significant other, their husband, their wife, that type of thing. Now, there is a difference between very successful men and average men when it comes to this list. Although most average men still have these same things, they tend not to be as stringent on them because, well, reality unfortunately is that they can't be. If you look at statistics from dating apps and stuff like that, the vast majority of women, 80% of women, are going for like the top 15 to 20% of guys on the apps. That means that those guys, the most successful guys, have the most chance of, well, basically they have all the power. They have all the choice. And believe me, choice is power. And so they can be very stringent, because if you don't fit their needs, well, maybe the next woman will. And believe me, there's always the next woman looking at these guys. So that is what it is. Now, for the average guy, he doesn't get as much choice. It used to be a little bit better. I can remember a time when it used to be a little bit better. Some average guys can still get women. A lot of it depends on looks, charisma, that type of thing. But for the most part, an average guy can't be as picky, because there aren't that many women that would be interested in him. And so although these things are important to him, he has to decide in his head, am I likely to find anyone else? And so should I settle with what I have? It's unfortunate that that's a thing for an average guy. It is what it is. That's just the reality of the dating marketplace right now. Women, generally speaking, always want a man that's a little bit higher status than they are. So, for instance, an average woman, a 5, is looking for a man that's a 6 or a 7, not a man that's a 5 on their level. And you know what? Fair enough. That's their preference. I would never. I mean, it kind of sucks to be a man in that case, especially an average man. But that is what it is. That's reality. I'm not. No one's been. There are some men that are bitter about it, but most just understand that's just how it is. That's how it works. So a lot of this is based on, how successful you are. And on top of that, although I know that a lot of men have these categories and use these categories, the difference comes in how much each man puts weight into each category, and what's the most important to him, what's the least important, so on. So, for instance, one man might think category 1 is the least important, and another man might think it's the most important. That's just what that is. So, what are these categories for men? Well, I'm just gonna name all 4, and then I'll talk about each one individually. So, first category, they want their woman to be feminine and submissive. Second, they want their woman to be an asset to their life, not a liability. Number 3, they want peace. And number 4, they don't want that woman to have history that could embarrass them. Okay, let's talk about them specifically. Number one, they want a woman who's feminine and submissive. Now, men are masculine. Now, there's variability about how masculine men are, but most men are masculine. We don't want to date other guys. We don't want to date women that act like other guys. That's just a thing for us. We're that. We don't want that. We want the opposite. So, I get it. If women are working and they want to be successful, because why wouldn't they want to be successful? I know very few people who are like, no, I want to fail at life. So if women are successful and they have the opportunity, they'll climb the ladder of success in whatever place they're working in, and as they go up that ladder, unfortunately, they gain a lot of masculine characteristics. Now, this is a benefit for them at work, especially as you get really high up on the totem pole. But it's not what men are looking for. So these very, very successful women sometimes, unfortunately, kind of take themselves out of the marketplace because they've had to become very, very masculine. Now, I've heard the argument on a lot of podcasts that I've watched or listened to, and the argument is, well, I'll become feminine for the right man. Men hear this and think it's ridiculous, and this is why. As a man, am I going to be, I'll be feminine until the right woman comes along and then I'll become masculine? No, we're just masculine. We're always the masculine. That is what it is. Is that fair that we make that? Because again, a lot of it comes down to how successful women are in whatever job field they're working. Maybe not, maybe not, but it is what it is. Again, kind of like the whole, well, women who are average want to date a guy that's above average. So it just doesn't compute to us. We think, okay, sure, when women say that. On top of that, if you're showing those behaviors now, how likely is it that you're going to change? And if you suddenly change and become the opposite, which one is the true you? Hard to say. So that's where it comes to that. Oh, we got a little boy show up. That's my cat Shadow. My co-host, who is gone. All right, guess he's done with his nap. Anyway, submissive. A lot of feminists have kind of tried to twist this word into meaning slave. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. Those are two different words with two different meanings. If you need a dictionary, go check it out. My cat's about to get himself into trouble here. Hold on. Shadow, go on. There, good boy. So, submissive. There has to be a leader in a relationship. If you have two captains on a ship, the one captain wants to go this way, the other captain wants to go this way, and the ship goes around in circles. You get nowhere. It doesn't work. Generally speaking, I would say that men are better leaders than women are. There's evidence that kind of proves this. In general, men tend to, in the moment, be able to be more logical and not as dependent on their emotions to help make their decisions. I think that is what a better leader does. On top of that, there's evidence female leaders of countries are 8 times more likely to go to war than males are, and they're also, in business, they're more likely to bankrupt a company than a male is in the same position. That being said, I don't know what percentage it is. It's not a high percentage. I don't want to give you a number because I've forgotten. If I can find that information in the maybe 2 hours I have before I want to post this, I'll put it up here, but I probably won't have time, truth be told. We'll see. And So I just think generally men are better leaders than women. Now there's a lot of things that women are better than men at. I think this one men are better. So that's why I think men should be the leader in a relationship. But again, if I'm a man and I'm going to talk about me, and I think about I'm a fairly average guy, maybe slightly under average when it comes, to the dating marketplace, but just average in general. In how I think and all that type of thing. A good leader doesn't just make a decision. A good leader, if he or she is a good leader, takes every piece of evidence they can, every opinion from everyone that has a right to an opinion, but like has a dog in the fight, as it were. And from that, and from all the evidence, makes the best decision they can. So I'm going to use the example of looking for a house. I, as an average guy, would never just buy a house and say, hey wife, we've got a house now and we're going to live here. It's not happening. It's not happening. We would go like most couples do, and they look at the houses, and I would have a conversation and sit down with them. Okay, what did you like about house number 1? What didn't you like about house number 1? What did you like about house number 2? What didn't you like? And so on and so forth down the list. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there's consensus and, we both like the same house, and boom, there. We'll buy that one, or we'll try to buy that one. If there isn't consensus, I hope that my wife understands that, yes, I'm going to have the final say. I will have taken everything she says into consideration and weighed it as much as I weigh my own opinions on things. And whether she believes this or not, I am making the best decision for the household that I think is right. It may be slightly different than hers for different reasons, but I am trying to make the best decision for the household. It's not like it's for me, it's for us, that decision. So that's what I mean when submissive. Like, you're going to have every say in the world, and I'm talking about like the big stuff when I'm talking about this. Where are we going for supper tonight? I don't care who makes that decision. That's not important. That's not going to affect the world, or my empire as the king and queen. Imagine your wife is the queen, you're the king. You want to build your empire. The big decisions are important. Where we go for supper tonight, not that important. I mean, there have been times when I've literally, with my ex, I've been like, oh, where'd you want to go for supper? She's like, I had a place in mind that I kind of wanted to go, but she's like, oh, let's go here. Wasn't the place I wanted to go? Okay, no problem. Because you know what? We can go to my place some other time. Not a big deal. I didn't even mention what my place was at that point. It wasn't that important to me. But again, if it's like buying a house or something like that, then yes, I think that the man should have the final say. But again, if he's a good man, he's listening to his wife. And by the way, if it's a 50-50 coin toss, if the man thinks both are okay and there are good and bad things about both, if the woman likes one more than the other, he's likely to side with his woman a lot of the time. Not always, but he's likely to, because again, we don't want to be like, no, fuck you, you're not, that's you're because I know women tend to feel, or a lot of women, I shouldn't say all women, but a lot of women tend to feel like if we're saying no, we think this is a better solution to what we need, a lot of women translate that into fuck you, we don't care about your opinion. No. The guy has spent hours weighing everything, hopefully, especially if we're using the house example. And just because he hasn't gone with you, that may be because he thinks there's one slightly better thing about this house than that house. It doesn't mean that he doesn't give a shit about your opinion. Which, like I said, a lot of women seem to think that means the same thing, and it really doesn't. Okay, number 2, be an asset to the guy's life, not just the guy though, but both of your lives, and not a liability. Now, this can mean different things depending on who we're talking about as a guy. More successful guys, they have an empire, or they're they've built an empire. They always want to grow more. So it makes them successful, or one of the things that makes them successful. If you're added to that empire, they want you to help in some way, shape, or form. Now, if they're the ones that are bringing home the money, they don't have time to look after a house. They don't have time to raise the children. I'd hope that they put some time into being with their kids, but a lot of their effort and a lot of their energy goes into bringing home the money for the entire household. So in that case, they want you to, look after the kids, raise them well, and look after the household. Now, for an average man, this might be slightly different. It could be, because I forget what the stat is for what the average wage is, but generally speaking, it's really not that high for the average in terms of salary work, and or hourly wage either, for that matter. And so for an average household, usually at this point in history, both people have to work, or there has to be significant sacrifice. So that could be, part of what the asset is. That together can we make enough to, survive and do well, or do at least well for what we can. On top of that, does she bring anything that could help me? Does she have good ideas to help improve our lives? Does she have any ideas that maybe could help in whatever work the person does? A good example of how a woman could be a liability, if you're bringing home, for instance, I'm just going to throw out random numbers here. This means nothing, but we'll go with it for the example. Let's say you bring home $4,000 a month. Not great, but not a bad salary or wage. And your wife is spending, let's say, $1,000 a month on stuff that she needs. I don't know, the purses, maybe a Chanel purse. I wear nondescript colored t-shirts. I know nothing about fashion or what the in brands and stuff are. I think Gucci, stuff like that. But if she's spending a quarter of what you both are bringing in on that stuff, that's money that could be going to pay for a house. That's money that could be going for potentially your children's future, your future retirement, stuff like that. That could be seen as a liability, and that's something that they have to take into account when, is this the woman for me? Number 3, peace. Every man that I have ever talked to about this has one dream. It's true. Now, have I talked to enough people that this is a reasonable data point? Probably no. But everyone that I've ever talked to about this, as a guy, has the same idea. We just want, when we walk through the door from coming home from work, we want half an hour to an hour of just peace. Let us do whatever we need to do. That's it. That's a teeny part of what I mean by peace, by the way. I'm going to talk more about it in a second. But if we've had a bad day, we need to decompress. Men decompress it differently than women do. Women deal with the issue of a bad day by talking it out. Men just deal with it up here and then flush. We're different. Men and women are different. I don't know if you knew this or not. We just are. It is what it is. And so, best case scenario for a man would be a woman that's like, hey, I know you just got home. I hope everything went well. Let me know when you're ready to talk. Instead, what a lot of men get is, oh, by the way, I want this, and then, oh, and I had a horrible time with this person, blah, 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 right as soon as they get in the door, and the man's still dealing with everything they have in their head, and now they're trying to add more into their head, and it just, let the guy decompress. But that's not all I mean about peace. So, like, for instance, they don't want to fight constantly. They don't want to bang heads constantly. That's not what they want. When talking specifically about although it's true for basically everywhere you go, I think it magnifies when you get into the most successful men. The outside world is like this, everywhere you go. McDonald's all the way to being a CEO. Now, CEO, it's much more like this. Butting heads, by the way. But it happens for McDonald's employees too. Just go and look at the Karen videos in McDonald's where they're throwing fries and burgers and all this stuff. It happens to us all. And if they have that out there, why would they want it in the house too? We don't. We as men are very simple creatures. Women don't understand. Like we are. We're fairly simple creatures. We want a couple things. We're not that picky. This is a big one for a lot of men. This is a big one for me. And lastly, no history that can embarrass them. There are a couple of mainstream examples right now of men who have been significantly embarrassed and their livelihoods damaged by the women, whether that's their wife or girlfriend, whatever. The big example that always comes to mind first is Will Smith. Look at what's happened to him. We don't talk about how good of an actor he is. That's definitely not what we're talking about when it comes to Will Smith right now, is it? That's how much history can damage a guy. Now, the more successful you are, the more that history can damage you, because respect is important to a guy. Respect is important to every guy. And if he loses that respect, which can be done by being embarrassed in this sort of way, it can be hard to gain that respect back. So if you think about all men, you have the very successful ones at the top, you have the average, and then you have the ones at the bottom. In each of those groups, there's even a hierarchy. So that's a full hierarchy, but in each of those groups, there's also a hierarchy. And so everyone in those groups is trying to get as high on the ladder of the hierarchy that they can. This type of thing could drag them down right to the bottom of the hierarchy, or at least limit their ability to get higher in the hierarchy, at the very least. And that is something that men have to, fight for every rung on that quote-unquote hierarchy ladder. If you've got something holding you back, you may get nowhere, and some people get nowhere anyway, and you don't want anything holding you back, because you never know how far you're going to get, and you never know when the end is the end for you. So we don't want anything like that. Now, specifically in this category, there's a couple things. First is, for instance, most men don't want women that have a lot of bodies. Is it a double standard? Yes. Are there tons of double standards when it comes to men and women? Yes, that's because men and women are different. It's very hard for men to actually sleep with women. And so that's seen as successful when they do. It's much more easy for women to sleep with men, and so it's not seen in the same light. I'll give you a good analogy to explain this, right? You as a woman could go into the street and go up to random men, strangers, and say, hey, I think you're kind of hot, you want to do something tonight, intimating adult relationship, adult fun. Men are going to say no to you, but eventually some man will say yes. Eventually that will happen. On the other hand, let's reverse that scenario, and it's a man going up to women in the street saying that. How long is it before cops are called on that man for being a creep? That's the difference. It's a lot harder for men. In that situation. I'm not saying everything is harder for men, because I know people can take things out of context, but I'm not saying everything's harder for men. In this situation, it's much harder for men to get a woman than it is for a woman to get a man. And body count does matter. Obviously, again, if you're a very successful man, you can be more picky about this. An average man has to balance. Okay, yeah, she's had more bodies, but am I likely to get anything better? And unfortunately for average men, that comes into the process of thinking. Now, whether that's right or not, I don't even think it matters if it's right or not. That's just reality. And I've talked to men that I know about this. I've seen it on podcasts. It's fairly true across the board. I think the most telling thing is when asked the question, let's say you have two women and they're identical in every way, and the only difference is this woman has 6 bodies and this woman has 60 bodies. Which woman are you into? The vast majority, if not almost every man, is going to choose the one that only has 6 bodies. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. First of all, there's just an ick factor when it comes to men and women having that many bodies. I mean, whether it's true or not, whether any of these are actually true or not, in a way, again, it doesn't matter. It's what's in the guy's head. But does that mean that the woman's more likely to cheat? Does that mean that the woman's more likely to, cut and run and find a different man? Is that more likely that the woman is... Is that more likely that the woman is going to be comparing you to all of her exes, and she's going to find a problem with you compared to him, and you compared to him, and you compared to him, and oh, maybe you're not the greatest guy ever? And is she going to obsess more about her exes than she's going to think about you in the moment? I'm not saying all women do that, but I have dealt with that in my own life. I know every guy has, where a woman's been, oh, well, you're not as good as such and such at doing this. Men, by the way, generally speaking, yeah, that was the past and now is now, and I'm with you now, so what happened then didn't really matter because I'm with you now. Are the things that men wish you did like their exes? Maybe. They're less likely, I think, to bring them up. Again, men don't like to be embarrassed, and well, this would be very embarrassing, and so we're like, why would we embarrass you like that? I'm sure there are some men that do. Most men I don't think would. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion, so take it with whatever grains of salt you want. And the big disqualifier for men is, in this category at least, is, are you an OF model or have you done corn? Now, whether you like the music or the food, exchange the K or the C for a P, you get what I'm talking about. And it's funny, some of the men that I've talked to about this have been like, well, I'd sleep with her for one night, but I'm not marrying her. I'm not putting a ring on her finger. And it's a sad thing that the women don't seem to get this. I wish more women realized this going into it, because I think it would at least make them think about it before they did it. Hopefully it would make them think about it before they did it. Why there's... Again, it's kind of like this biological ick factor. Why would I want my woman that's supposed to be exclusive to me, if you're in an exclusive relationship, I'm going to assume in this case you are, why would I want other guys being able to see her body? That should be my privilege, being in this exclusive relationship with her. Now, I get it. She may have exes and they've seen her body, but that's just part of life. But not every Joe Schmo can pay some money and see her body. That's where we get Nick Factor. And don't get me wrong, there are some men that will, be in relationships with them, and I hope they're in happy relationships, and I hope it works out for them. But it's just not for me. So, as I've said, every man kind of weighs these categories a little bit differently. So just to show you my personal list of what's most important, I'll go through them. So, and by the way, this list changes for guys. Sometimes it depends on like what they're going through. Sometimes it just naturally will change a little bit over time, what they need, what they want, that type of thing. So for me, first and foremost, peace. Peace is the most important. My life right now is unfortunately much more chaotic than I would like. I actually had it pretty peaceful at one point, and then things kind of happened with my grandfather. I've talked about that. You can on this channel if you've seen it. Unfortunately, my grandfather has leukemia and is dying, and his last wish is to die in the comfort of his own home. And so everyone's kind of chipping in within the family to look after him and make sure there's always someone with him. We don't know how long it's going to take him to go. In September they thought it was going to be a day, and now it's December, or almost December. So he's 95. He's stubborn. He'll go when he's damn well ready, as he has pointed out many times to the doctors. It's just who he is. But because of the chaos, because of the running back and forth between the different places and all that stuff, right now, peace. I'm dealing with all this stuff. I don't want to deal with more issues than I have to at home. Next, I would want my wife to be feminine and submissive. I don't need you to be. I don't need my wife to be ultra feminine by any means. I'm not the most masculine guy in the world. I'm sure you can kind of maybe see that from some of my videos. But I am masculine, and I don't want that in a wife. So a good feminine woman, and yes, I would want her to be submissive, but again, submissive doesn't mean slave. Next, obviously, I want you to be an asset and not a liability. If you can find ways to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to appreciate it any way, shape, or form. And lastly, obviously, I wouldn't date an OF model or someone who's done corn. And when it comes to body count, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm 36. I assume that a woman about my age, because that's kind of what I'm looking for to date, maybe a little younger, but not too much younger for me personally. I understand that she's lived a life up until this point. I have a kind of number in my head. It can bend a little bit either way, but I do have a number that I'm like, if it's over this, it's kind of like, no, thank you. And other than that, I don't put much emphasis in that. And I mean, most of the time, that's not even going to come up in conversation. It's not going to be brought up in conversation by me, I should say. A lot of women kind of have tells when it comes to this kind of type of thing, and because men are so honed into it, we kind of see these behaviors that kind of suggest that you're more promiscuous or less promiscuous. I mean, we can get it wrong, but a lot of the time we're actually pretty good at it. So, plus if we ask, what are the odds that someone's going to lie if they're embarrassed by their number anyway? So, You know. But anyway, that's just those are mine. I will point something out. If he's dating you, it means he's attracted to you. So it means you've passed that portion. If he's attracted to you, all of these things that I've mentioned here, there's one benefit. All of them are choices, and they're choices that you make. So it's not like any of his preferences are going to immediately disqualify you. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, when I talk about this tomorrow, women tend to have a preference that they like, or a lot of women have a preference that they want a man that's at least 6 foot tall. Well, that eliminates a significant portion of the population, just based on genetics that you have no control over. You have control over all of these. You have a choice whether you're feminine or not. You have a choice whether you're submissive or not. You have a choice whether you want to be an asset to the relationship or you have liability. You have a choice whether you want to, waste a lot of money on stuff or whether you want to help and grow the relationship. You have a choice to whether you want to constantly fight with each other or not. You have a choice about what you've done in your past, and I get that you have to make that choice back then, and sometimes it's too late at this point, but at least you have that choice. So, which leads me into my next video, which I'm going to put up tomorrow. I know tomorrow is Black Friday. I don't expect a lot of views on it immediately, but it is an interesting video, and that's going to be about the preferences of women when it comes to dating. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.